Lucid. He will tell you he didn't believe in sleep paralysis until Tiana Brooks put the phone on speaker and let him hear the air pressing down on her lungs. He will say her name softly, Tiana, because the apartment still seems to carry it. He will say she'd gone 48 days without decent sleep before the thing inside her dreams decided it was done being contained. Tiana was the kind of woman who fixed what other people were afraid to touch. A grinding garbage disposal, a leaking radiator, a silence after an argument. She read about lucid dreaming the way some people read scripture. Margin notes, sticky tabs, rules written on index cards above the headboard. You're dreaming. Test reality. Move a finger. Don't look at the mirror too long. She set alarms at 90-minute intervals, trained herself to hold on to the edge of sleep and tug it her way. The first night of the story, the air thickened. The ceiling fan slowed like it was stirring honey. A pressure lay across her chest as precise and heavy as a folded quilt. Her tongue was a locked door. She couldn't move, but she could see. A shape stood at the foot of the bed. Not a stranger, not a shadow. Her. Not reflection, separation. The dream self stepped out of the polished black of the TV screen and stood there, head tilted, affectionate and cruel. Her text to him arrived at 3:13 a.m. Paralyzed, but awake. I can see myself. He told her to breathe. He told her to wriggle a toe. He told her things he'd read online that sound brave and are mostly superstition. The shape smiled. And though the real Tiana's mouth was a locked door, the shape's mouth was a window thrown open. Tiana, it said with her voice, but older. Tired in a way that wasn't human tired. You've been steering too long. The streetlight outside blinked as if a hand had pinched the filament. Her phone's clock held 3:13 like a pose. The shape leaned closer until her breath fogged the air that should have been Tiana's. Now, it said, I dream you. Her chest lifted once, as if aloud. The fan stuttered. He kept saying her name, into the phone, into the speaker, across the city, like a rope thrown across water. When the call dropped, she still hadn't moved. He came over the next evening because daylight is arrogant and assumes it can dissolve whatever the dark makes. Tiana's apartment, top floor, narrow hallway, the hum of old wiring, smelled of eucalyptus and something sweet he couldn't name. The power indicator on the router was a steady red that should have blinked, like it had forgotten how to communicate. Tiana let him in with tired politeness, like you'd greet a paramedic after you've already done the worst part yourself. I'm fine, she said. And the lie looked good on her for exactly one breath. She was brown-skinned and beautiful in that clean-boned way that makes you think of architecture. But her eyes had the grain of a photograph taken in low light. Eat something, he said, because meals are how men negotiate with fear. I'm not hungry, she told him, and then, softer, but stay. She had rules taped up everywhere. Count fingers. Read the time twice. Don't trust the eyes in the mirror. He pretended not to notice the rule written in smaller letters on the edge of the bathroom door. Don't say my name if the other me is in the room. They sat with Netflix, pretending to be noise. She told him, voice thinned with embarrassment, about the way the shape breathed, how her lungs hurt like she'd run behind herself, begging to keep up. He listened like a man who has learned there are errands you run for the people you love that have no stores and no receipts. You can sleep here? He offered, meaning on him, meaning within reach of his hands. I can't, she said. If I drift, she comes. She wants the controls. Then we don't drift, he said, and put on coffee as if caffeine were courage. At midnight, the red router light still refused to blink. The digital clock on the microwave held a minute the way a mouth holds a vow. When he stood to stretch, the shadow he cast across the hallway lagged, like it needed a reminder. He looked at the wall, then at her. She shook her head. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. At 1:40, her body did that micro-collapse the sleep doctors call a hypnic jerk, and she caught herself with a hand to the arm of the couch. Her palm left a print on the leather, like heat had made it briefly wet. "Don't," she whispered to herself. "Stay above the line." But the line is a suggestion when the dream decides it's a law. At 2:06, the apartment made a small house sound, a settling creak. The ceiling fan slowed again, as if time were a syrup poured across its blade. He reached for her hand in a gesture that hoped muscle memory could be contagious. The red light didn't blink. The clock refused to count. The room had that theater hush before the curtain goes up. And somewhere between the count of one breath and the next, she went under. He said her name. Twice. He touched her wrist and felt a pulse like a drum held to the chest. Strong, then slow, then stubbornly steady. Her eyes were partially open in the way of sleep paralysis, a sliver of iris visible beneath lashes. The fan's pull chain ticked once and then stopped like someone had pinched it in the air. Tiana is dreaming, but she is not alone in the dream, he thought, and said aloud in the tone you use to a frightened child. "You know what this is. Remember your rules. Count fingers." Her right hand lifted. He didn't see the muscles move. He saw the gesture already finished, and then reality catching up, like time was obeying directions issued elsewhere. She raised 4 fingers. She stared at them. The corners of her mouth tightened. She raised the 5th and breathed sharply in her throat. The pinky was there. Then it wasn't. Then it was longer than a pinky should be. Then it settled back into place with a soft, rubbery pop. Her breath rasped like the apartment had gone dry. "Read the time," he suggested, and the microwave obeyed. Not her. Its 2:06 became 2:07, and then back to 2:06, stubborn as a skipping record. She turned her head, slowly as an old hinge, toward the TV screen's black. In it, their reflection, distorted by the curve. She looked like she'd been drawn by someone who had loved her and forgotten her mouth. "Don't fix your eyes there," he said. "Come back to me." Her throat moved. He leaned close, put his ear almost to her lips. Her breath smelled like mint and the copper you taste when the night has pressed too hard on your chest. "She's learning," Tiana whispered. "I push." She pushes back. He looked at the reflection despite his own advice. In the black TV glass, her dream double smiled. Too many teeth in a grin that wasn't comedic, just comprehensive. The double lifted a hand. On her wrist, a hospital bracelet flashed into being. White, plastic, printed with a name that wasn't Tiana's, and then was. He blinked, and the bracelet wasn't there. "Make a door," he said, remembering from an article she had read aloud to him. In lucid dreaming, you make a door. You choose where it goes. Her eyes slid to the hallway. She swallowed. "Front door," she rasped. "Good," he said. She blinked slow and deliberate, like sealing an intention. The lock on the apartment door clicked, not from the outside, from the idea of a hand on the inside, then clicked again, a polite refusal. She made it first, Tiana said. She's faster when I'm heavy. He took her hand, the one whose pinky had misbehaved. It was cold in that fevered way, sweat that doesn't wet the skin. He squeezed. "Hold on," he said. "You're not alone." There was a sound from the bedroom. Not a footstep. The absence of one. The specific quiet that happens when something with weight tries not to be heard. "Count," he said, pretending the tremor in his voice was a creak in the couch. "3, she said. 2, 1. The apartment held its breath. And then from the doorway, her voice, but not occupied by her, said sweetly, "Open your eyes." They were already open. The problem was whose hands were on the controls. He will tell you this part because the alternative is admitting there are places in a one-bedroom apartment you cannot map with blueprints. The corridor from living room to bedroom stretched when he stood up. He swears it. 3 steps became 5, then 9. The light at the end thinned like dawn applied with a stingy brush. "Tiana," he called, still beside the couch, but also farther away now. "Stay with me." Her breath had gone quiet. Not stopped, rehearsed. The double, visible only in glass, turned its head toward the corridor, expectant like a host hearing a guest arrive. He walked anyway. Because what else is a man supposed to do when the house becomes theater and the actors are calling cues from the catwalk? The bedroom door was ajar. He touched it, and the wood felt warmer than it should. On the bed, the duvet rose, fell. No one there. The pillow had the memory of a head. The mirror on the closet door was covered with a throw blanket, safety-pinned like a bandage. In the uncovered slice by the hinge, a sliver of the room reflected wrong. The fan in that room spun fast. A breath at his ear, soft female, familiar enough to make his heart ache. "Don't take the blanket down," the breath said. He didn't. He is not brave like that. He is ordinary brave. Back in the living room, Tiana's body jerked once, a fish caught in a net of breath. He knelt. "You're in the corridor," he said to her, guessing the dream geography by feel. "Come back the way you came." Her lips parted. "I can't," she said. She put hands on the walls. "What does that mean?" he asked, stupid with love and fear. "Sticky," she whispered, "like honey. Every step takes more of me." He brushed hair from her forehead. Her skin was cool, sweaty, night sick. "Take it back," he said. Not sure what it was. "Pull it like a rope." Her eyes shifted under the lids. The microwave clock leaped to 3:12 and then, jarringly, settled to 3:13. The router light flashed once, red to green, then returned to unblinking red like it had thought better of cooperating. "Tell me something true," he said. "I am not alone in here," she said. "Out here," he said, and put both hands on her shoulders to anchor her to somewhere. She sobbed once without sound. The walls answered with the faintest echo, a repetition like a room trying to recall the exact shape of that noise. And from the bedroom, the throw blanket, safety-pinned, careful, tightened on its own, as if wind had passed through the world on the other side of glass. "Tiana," he said, using her name like a chaplain uses scripture. "Who is she?" "The me," she said, "that never sleeps." He didn't have anything wise to say to that. He just stayed, hands steady, while the apartment stretched and the corridor remembered how to be short again and the fan's chain swung once, free. When the paralysis released, it did not announce itself. It simply loosened. She sat up so fast, she knocked her forehead into his chin, and both of them said, "Ow," at the exact same time, human with relief. "She's learning the hall," Tiana said, touching the bruise already rising in a crescent. "We have to close the house." "How?" "Rules," she said, as if that were a weapon. They wrote them on fresh index cards and taped them over older ones, a palimpsest of instructions for a house that refused obedience. Rule 1, sleep with the mirror covered. Rule 2, do not speak her name, the other one. Rule 3, when the air gets heavy, hum. Rule 4, do not count past 5. Rule 5, if she asks to trade, say no out loud. "Why hum?" he asked. "It's a line," Tiana said. "A note you can hold." She can't breathe on it. She demonstrated a low hum that seemed to steady the chain on the fan, to make the corners of the room agree on an angle. He brewed more coffee he didn't need. She drank water like she was proving a point. At the window, the city's lights behaved. Honest street lights. Tail lights threading. The neighbor's television glow doing what it always did. Stubbornly blue. "I slept inside a dream of my old apartment once," she said, sitting on the arm of the couch, speaking sideways like confessions prefer. Everything was right, but the scent. It smelled like static. I think that's what we're in now. It looks like my place. It doesn't smell like my place. What does your place smell like? Candle smoke and laundry and a little bit of oil from my hair, she said, as matter of fact as a recipe. This smells like a mouth before a scream. He didn't tell her he could smell it too now that she'd named it. Rule 6, she said, chewing her lip. If you wake up in the apartment and the router light is steady red, you're still inside. That's specific, he said. I am a very specific woman, she said, and almost smiled, which made his chest hurt, and then the smile shut because the red light did not blink. They lasted until 4:10. Courage has a clock. Courage wipes its eyes and says, "Fine, 1 more hour." Courage pretends that's enough. When she dozed, he woke her gently. When he dozed, she nudged his knee with her foot. It felt like camping next to a cliff. At 4:32, the air thickened so suddenly it was as if a door had been closed in the next room. The hum left his throat without him deciding. She joined him, her note slightly higher, the two making a beat frequency that soothed the ceiling's shadow back into place. From the covered mirror came the soft metallic rattle of a safety pin shifting under strain. He looked at her. She shook her head. "Don't." Rule 7, she whispered. If she knocks, we do not answer. Across the apartment, the front door's deadbolt turned halfway, politely, as if reconsidering. "Count fingers," he said. She held up 5, studied them like a cashier checking bills against a strip of light. They stayed true. Read the time. 4:33, she said. The microwave agreed. The phone did not. Her lock screen showed 3:13, as if the night were a compass that only knew one direction. She wants me to check the mirror, Tiana said, even though they both already knew. Then don't, he said. But it isn't about want. It's about gravity. Her eyes went to the thin, uncovered slice beside the hinge. In the sliver, something waited. He said. They did. The sound swelled, then thinned, then held. The deadbolt eased back with a skittish little click, The safety pin in the blanket softened its rattle. The router light blinked once. Green, red, green again. He exhaled and laughed a single note that wasn't humor so much as anatomy. "We can win," he said, and let himself believe it for the duration of one heartbeat. The apartment believed something else. He will admit he almost missed the trade because exhaustion makes arithmetic sloppy. At 5:02, between one blink and the next, Tiana's hand on his knee felt not cold for the first time in hours. Warm, warm like sun after a church service. He looked down, relief rising, then stalled. Her bracelet, not a bracelet, he corrected himself. A hair tie she wore at her wrist had moved to the wrong arm. He glanced at the TV's black. In the reflection, the other Tiana's hair tie was correct. He kept his voice steady. "Which wrist?" he asked, too casually. She didn't answer. Her breath stayed in that practiced cadence. The hum in her throat was gone. He stood, slow. The building's bones creaked, interested. The safety pin on the mirror blanket pulled taut like something behind it had hooked a finger. "Tiana," he said. "Say Rule 5. Her lips moved. The voice that came out was hers, the way a good counterfeit is money. "We don't trade unless—" "No," he said sharply, and the counterfeit flinched. "Rule 5 says, if she asks to trade, say no out loud. Say it." The mouth smiled. "No," she repeated, quiet as a courtesy. He felt, more than heard, a pop, like suction releasing, like two palms parting. The apartment exhaled. The hair tie appeared on the right wrist again. Tiana blinked, her blink messy, earnest. "She almost got the keys," she said, embarrassed and furious. "I was in the hall." I could feel her hand touch the lock inside my hand, like we were overlapped. He swallowed the tremor in his own throat. "We need daylight." "We need boundaries," she said. "The kind she can't learn." "What kind is that?" "The kind I didn't make," she said. "Somebody else's rule." He thought of churches and hospitals and places where people agree to behave because their fear is organized. He is not the man who tells women where to go for safety. But he is the man who will ask, "Would it help to sleep somewhere that has its own rules?" She understood. "Not my mother's," she said, grief running one finger along a scar you think is healed. "But maybe a different bed." They packed like fugitives. Toothbrushes, one book of Psalms, a sweatshirt that still remembered a cinnamon-sweet perfume. He kept glancing at the router, red unblinking. It did not want them to go. The walkway light in the hall flickered once, a final think it through. At the door, she paused to touch the index cards. "Stay," she said to the apartment, ridiculous and sincere. The deadbolt turned easily. The hall was obediently short. When the elevator doors closed, he let out a breath with enough force it fogged the brushed steel. The elevator stopped on 3, even though they had pressed 1. The doors didn't open. The floor indicator held. 3 again. 3. 3:13 in the strip of reflection above the door, a clock that didn't exist. She squeezed his hand until his knuckles protested. "She rides the elevator," Tiana said. "Then we take the stairs," he answered. And the doors opened as if pleased to be disagreed with. They went to the only place open and empty enough at that hour that promised rules older than the dream. St. Gabriel's. Brick stoop worn by a century of uncertainty. sanctuary lights burning the low amber of after hours. He had a key because once, years ago, he fixed the fire alarm panel as a favor, and the priest had said, "Keep it, in case the building ever needs you again." He never expected the building to be a woman he loved. Inside, the electric candle rack flickered gently. The router light in the little office off the narthex blinked green, dutiful. The air smelled like wood varnish and the last thing someone cried about. "Sit," he told her, and she did, on the end of a pew near the side aisle where statues kept watch like patient grandparents. He knelt back of pew like a man preparing to lie to God and hoping the posture might soften the sin. "Boundaries," she said, looking up at the coffered ceiling. "You'll be the first to know if they hold." She tried to nap, not sleep, nap, like a cat holding a piece of day in its mouth. The sanctuary's low hum, HVAC, old wiring, a 2 a.m. train, settled itself like a shawl around them. At 5:41, her head nodded forward. He put a hand on her shoulder, reflex. She caught his wrist and moved it to the top of her sternum, pressing lightly as if to say, "Hold this down if something tries to get out." He felt it before she did. The slow heaviness, not a weight, a remembering of weight, as if the stone and wood and glass were teaching the air to be heavy again. Her eyes rolled beneath lids. The candle lights flattened to coins. "Hum," he whispered, and she did. The note gathered in the rafters and came back to them thin but loyal. From the nave, a whisper of cloth. The statue of St. Michael did not move. Of course it did not. But his shadow elongated towards them like he had leaned into their business. Tiana's hum wavered. "Stay with me," he said. Her mouth opened. "She doesn't like other rules," Tiana whispered. "She wants agency." He didn't know how to argue with the demand of an idea. The red light on the office router, visible through the cracked door, steadied, not blinking, the exact wrong obedience. He stood. "I'll unplug it," he whispered. Tiana's eyes snapped open. "Don't leave me." "I'm not," he said, already halfway there. Which is another kind of leaving. At the office doorway, he reached for the plug and felt it. Not static, preference. As if the building preferred the cord inside the wall. He tugged anyway. The plug resisted like a tooth you shouldn't pull. He yanked. It came free, and the sanctuary exhaled like something had let go of a breath it had been holding for a century. "Better?" he asked, turning back, holding the slack cord like a trophy. Tiana's eyes were open now, but too open, the way a dream draws eyes. The hum had gone from her throat. She smiled, all her teeth gentle and wrong. "Better," said a voice shaped like Tiana's, but tuned to a note none of the saints had approved. He dropped the cord. He moved without thinking. Instinct, training, love. He knelt, took Tiana's face in his hands, palms to her cheeks, the way you do when you're trying to memorize someone. "Say Rule 5, he demanded, her eyes focused with visible effort. "If she asks to trade," Tiana said, voice rough with gravel and sleep. "Say no out loud." "Say it," he urged. She swallowed. "No." Again. "No." The sanctuary brightened by a whisper. A light behind the altar flicked on by itself, shyly. The router cord at his feet warmed in his hand, as if the line inside it still carried something more than current. "She found another entrance," Tiana said, every word work. "Not the mirror. Not the hall. She can come through what connects." "Then nothing connects," he said. We isolate. He put his phone in the airplane mode, then off entirely. He took hers, did the same. He looked at the electric candle rack, the outlet it was plugged into. He couldn't unplug all of St. Gabriel's. She likes 313, Tiana said. She had that look again, like a fighter in the 10th round, listing in the direction of one last punch. But she likes threes in general, the way a bad habit likes an excuse. He checked his watch. 5:58. Dawn thinned the stain of night at the stained glass. We wait past 6, he said. We walk out with the bell. They waited. He hummed. She matched. He counted fingers with her out loud. He named colors in the windows: sapphire, wine, the weird brown that means old wood is telling you to mind your step. He said her name without fear because saying it felt like claiming space. At 6 o'clock, the hour bell did not ring. The silence wasn't an absence. It was a choice. Tiana stood, swayed. He stood with her, shoulder to shoulder. We go to the door, he said. We open the morning. They walked the center aisle. The nave lengthened a fraction, but they have legs, and the sacred has patience. At the threshold, Tiana touched the holy water font, not for blessing, for boundary. She will be right behind us, she said. Let her, he said. She doesn't own the street. He pushed the door. It stuck, humid wood. He pushed harder. It gave. Daylight, honest, indifferent, poured in. He breathed it like medicine. And Tiana said, not to him, not to the air, but to something behind her at shoulder height, at whisper distance. Stay. For one heartbeat, he believed. Then the red exit sign above them flickered, unblinking, the exact shade of the rudder light that never slept. He brings this part out sparingly because it sounds like lying. They made it to the sidewalk. The street had cars. The bakery on the corner dragged out a rack to cool loaves. A woman in scrubs hurried past with a paper cup and the morning on her face. Tiana stood in sun and shook the night off her shoulders like a shawl. He took her hand. Your place is off limits for a while, he said. She nodded. I'll sleep at your place. He opened his mouth to agree and heard, faint as a misremembered lyric, a hum that wasn't theirs. The city hummed. Transformers, refrigeration, neon signs refusing to quit. He looked up at the building's soffit. A red camera light blinked, then steadied. We can't outrun electricity, she said softly. We live in it. He drove her to his apartment anyway. Because some choices you make because you're a person, not because you think you can win. He opened his door and let her in first, because that is how doors are supposed to work. Inside, the router blinked green, then red, then green. He exhaled. She exhaled. They sat on his couch with a sloppy relief that made them human again. Nap, he said. Just 20 minutes. I'll keep watch. Wake me if I hum wrong, she said. He laughed once, and she did too, exhausted and sincere. She lay on her side. He put a hand on her shoulder and felt alive there. Warmth he recognized. She slept. He watched her breath. He listened for the vacancy in the air that signaled wait. He counted in his head to keep from thinking. He reached 218 and the power went out. The apartment went from modern to medieval with a single click. The hum stopped. The refrigerator fell silent in surprise. The router light died, and with it the reassurance of a system he could curse. In the window's reflection, because there is always glass. He saw them. 5 Tianas, layered like exposure errors, each slightly out of register. One with her eyes open, one with her mouth open, humming. One whose chest did not rise. One whose lips moved as if saying no. One whose head turned toward him with the speed of a decision. He shook her shoulder. "Wake up." Her eyes opened. She blinked once, twice. "Awake," she said, and he had never wanted to believe a word more. "Tell me Rule 1, he said. She frowned. Which one was Rule 1? He stared. She had written them herself. She had said them like a spell. She had corrected him when he got the numbering wrong. "Mirror," he said carefully. "Rule 1 was the mirror." She nodded too quickly. "Yes. Right. Of course." He stood, crossed to the bathroom, pulled the shower curtain half aside to make sure this was still a bathroom and not a place, then closed the mirror cabinet with his palm. His own face looked back at him, and he was not reassured. Out in the living room, Tiana hummed a note he did not recognize. The pitch was almost his, but narrow, as if someone were squeezing it through a smaller throat. He walked back, sat, took her hand the way a strategist places a piece. "You're awake," he said. "I'm awake," she echoed. He looked at the router. No light to betray allegiance. He looked at the microwave clock and saw 3:13 in black glass that wasn't a clock. He looked at her and saw a woman who could fix anything apart from the thing after it changed its name. The power came back on. The router blinked green. The microwave leaped to 12 o'clock and then begged to be set. The refrigerator hummed like a thing grateful for work. The window threw daylight back at itself. "Tell me your mother's middle name," he said. She didn't answer in time. And the silence held not ignorance, but permission. He will tell you he tried everything a person can do when the house of the world folds into a smaller version inside a dream's fist. He called a doctor. He called a pastor. He called a friend who does not sleep because her job eats different hours. He turned off phones and then turned them on. He unplugged things. He plugged them back in to prove to himself that the lights belong to circuits and not to stories. He sat with Tiana and told her the names of all the streets between here and her childhood home. He said them like prayer beads. He told her about the time she had parallel parked a borrowed truck into a space so tight he had clapped alone on the sidewalk like a fool. He told her about the way she laughs when she wins and the way she smiles when somebody else does. He made a map of her in words and asked the air to agree. At 3:13 p.m., because the hour loses its AM/PM when a dream prefers, it happened. The router light turned steady red and did not blink. The microwave clock, set 10 minutes earlier, flipped to 3:13. The phone, off, showed 3:13 on a blank screen. The window reflection filled with midday shadows. In the black of the TV, Tiana stood up while Tiana on the couch did not. He stood as if pulled by a string. "No," he said, "because Rule 5 is the only rule that matters at the end." The Tiana in the glass smiled a pitying smile. "You've been a good anchor," she said without sound. He read it in the movement of her mouth, because the world was quiet, because the hum had withdrawn, because the dream wanted its turn. The Tiana on the couch opened her eyes, and they were the wrong temperature. "Say my name," she asked. He did. He said it the way you say the last word of a prayer. "Again?" she asked gently. He did, because he is human, and she asked. The apartment sighed. The corridor lengthened. The ceiling fan slowed to a stop. The rules on the index cards curled at the edges like paper left near a stove. "Do you remember me?" he asked. "Last test." "I remember the dreamer," she said, and tilted her head the exact way the shape had at the foot of the bed on the first night. He put his hand on her sternum and pressed lightly, a gesture that had worked before. He hummed. She did not answer the note. The mirror in the bathroom closed, clicked. The safety pin he had not put there tugged. The red light on the router steadied like a heartbeat held in a hand. He found himself counting finger bones in his own hand because he needed something to count. They were 5. Then they were not. Then the math stopped mattering. He will tell you he did not say no loudly enough. He will tell you the dream had wanted that word all along, to wear it like a coat. He will tell you because he needs you to believe there was a moment when this could have ended differently. That she smiled at him like she knew his fear and loved him anyway. And then she stood. The Tiana he loved. The Tiana the dream loved. The same woman, newly singular, with her hair tie on whichever wrist it wanted. "Do you want to sleep?" she asked. He backed toward the door. He thought of churches and routers and index cards curling. He thought of mornings that would not arrive on schedule. He thought of an ordinary world that had been colonized by one time and one preference. He reached for the deadbolt. It turned halfway, politely, as if reconsidering. Behind him, her voice, his favorite voice, the one he had believed would always belong to her, said softly, "Open your eyes." He had never closed them. He opened the door anyway, because that is what doors are for. Outside, the hall was longer than it had a right to be. At the far end, an elevator waited with its mouth slightly open, breathing the light of a floor that did not have a number. He will tell you he ran. He will tell you the elevator took him to 3 no matter which button he pressed. He will tell you the city smells like static now, and that he hums when he walks past mirrors. He will tell you Tiana sleeps very well, and that some nights, when he says her name too loudly in his own kitchen, the red light on the router steadies, and from the TV's dark glass a familiar smile begins to form, patient as a rule written by something that has always been awake.
Thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Moon. If this story touched you, scared you, or kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps the stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next one with you under the moonlight. Until then, may your nights be safe and your dreams unforgettable.